I am Mayor Watt. I'm the mayor of ohmTown. That's ohmTown at ohmTown.com. I stream here on Twitch. I also post everything over to YouTube daily, and it gets converted into a podcast as well. All of which is available right now. Go over to Apple or Google or Spotify or others. I distribute now to most of the podcatcher places, and for you to use your podcatcher, just do a search for ohmTown. And if you don't see it, then let me know, and I will make sure that it gets delivered there as well. Today's going to be a little bit shorter than usual. Although I look casual, I am still the mayor of ohmTown, and I've got some work that I need to do. I might actually even end up sipping some coffee while I'm streaming, and I appreciate your patience. If you're listening to this as the podcast, thank you very much. Leave a review, like it elsewhere on YouTube, and come over and follow me on Twitch. That would be great. I've had to postpone opening up other shows, mainly because they would be weekend shows, not during the week, or they would be nighttime shows, and I want to plan it a little better. And so we are currently on episode 121 for 2022. It's becoming a number wang kind of thing, right? Anyway, so welcome again to ohmTown. ohmTown is a news aggregation site, but it also has a community underneath it. Most of the people who have been using ohmTown aren't actually posting any comments. I started doing some research a long time ago about social networks, and one of the things that I found out is that many social networks that start up use fake accounts to create some type of interaction, right? And one of the biggest ones that did this is Reddit. And it was disclosed in an interview. I mean, it's been a decade since this was disclosed. I remember it when it was first discussed. And I always thought that was just really, I don't know, just not something that I could do. So when you go over to ohmTown.com, you won't find much communication there. And I can't create fake accounts. It's just not in my nature. So I encourage you to go over to ohmTown.com and post a comment or two on whatever stream or any thread within any channel within any category, right? So I mean, we have 6 main categories: create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. Those are across the top of the page, every page. And then when you go down into any of the groups, you'll see the channels, and each one of these channels is a niche topic that is fed aggregated news from around the world. Mostly in English. Every once in a while, I'll grab something that's in another language, and I'll have to use Google Translate to translate it. Obviously, I lose some idiomatic context, but for the most part, I aggregate news from any source that I find valuable. I rank it. I use this site in my daily life. It isn't something that was initially meant for everybody else, but I think that it is a benefit because of its focused alignment with things. And I don't actually take in personal submissions of anything. This is all from news organizations that I have vetted for efficacy for my particular needs. But again, I think everybody might like something within this framework. So feel free to go over and use ohmTown.com. But I am always going to be streaming here on Twitch. Although, based on whatever the rumors pan out to be about the changes that are coming to Twitch, I might end up restreaming to YouTube as well. Only because of the nature of this the streaming platform. Ah, every once in a while, my stream pauses. Nothing is changing on my system. Everything remains the same, but whatever it is kills my stream for a split second, and then it catches up literally because it'll drop to like 2000 kilobits, and then suddenly it's at 12,000, and then it drops back down to 6,200 or so. At any rate, let's get into today's news. For the most part, it's going to be a really short show. And the very first article is about Razer. The co-founder and gaming mouse inventor Robert Krakoff has passed away. He was 81, so I suppose led a good life and changed the gaming industry, I'd say, because Razer is and their mice in particular are amongst the most popular, if not the most popular solution. Probably tied next to a couple of Logitech gaming mice. But for the most part, it says here, the co-founder and former president of gaming hardware company Razer passed away last week at the age of 81. And maybe you've never heard of maybe you've never heard Krakoff's name, but it's possible you've been impacted by his far-reaching legacy. So we'll click the link and it'll take us over to The Verge and an article written by Sean Hollister and Emma Roth. And before Razer, the company, there was Razer Guy. And there's Razer Guy. Dun, dun, dun. So, literally in it to win it. And he looks like there's an actor that played Greatest American Hero, I think it was. He looks like that guy. I don't know if that's the same person. Anyway. Yeah. Go over to The Verge and you can read more about the Razer co-founder and gaming mouse inventor Robert Krakoff, who recently passed away. Let's continue on. The next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel. It's related to business and it's related to entrepreneurship in particular. This here says, I pay $400 a month for health insurance as a freelancer and I wouldn't give it up for coverage from a full-time job. And this article is sourced from businessinsider.com, but it says, I pay about $400 a month for my health insurance as a freelancer. It's worth it to me because I have mental health coverage. I paid just a $10 copay for therapy. I wouldn't hesitate to accept an employer plan that didn't, or I would hesitate to accept an employer plan that didn't cover mental health in the same way, and that they are a self-employed person and pay for health insurance via the marketplace the first year after their divorce because their tax return showed that their household income was from when they were married. They had to pay the full fee, quote unquote, which was a bummer and a big financial strain. So let's click the link. It takes us over to Business Insider, and the article is written by Lauren Wheatman Hill. And, it is the author that is actually doing the article and talking about being self-employed. I guess they are a self-employed writer contracted to Business Insider or their article was purchased by Business Insider. So they've framed their health insurance based off of what is available, and in doing so limited what their outlay is per month. And at $400 for an individual, I think that it's reasonable in context because depending on where you are, who you are, it can range wildly. Not to mention what you want, right? So some people pay $300 per paycheck. Some people pay more or less, right? And some people nix it all together and just pay when there is an issue, and some can do that. Needless to say, you have to get health insurance at some level. So it says that they chose a high tier plan for its mental health coverage. And that was their particular decision. Not everybody feels that they need that or want that, but it's relatively inexpensive when it's a copay, but you're not really just a copay. If you go on the regular, regardless, you're still paying $400 a month plus the copay. And so they say that they see their prescriber once a month. They see a therapist weekly for $10 per copay, and they see their prescriber once a month for $20 per copay. And they say $60 a month for 5 hours of care is a steal. Well, it's $400 plus the $60. And there's prescription drugs and other things that you may have to pay extra on top of it. They kind of haphazardly mention it in the article. But if you want a perspective from somebody who is getting health coverage in the marketplace and is a freelancer, then go over and check it out. To this day, I think that things are wildly expensive, even with insurance. And depending on what ails you in the end, it can be even more expensive because not everything is covered by every plan, which is a real shame. But individuals have no bargaining power. Individuals have to form consortiums, and those consortiums can argue for better benefits en masse. The problem there is that there are very limited organizations that can facilitate that. Typically, it's going to be a union. So there's an interesting argument there for unionization. But let's continue on with the next article. The next article is over in the Hatch Ideas channel. Again, all of these articles that I talk about are in the show notes. You can follow them to ohmTown, and then from there, you can read the little snippet and make a comment, or you can click the link to the source. I encourage that. I don't want you making comments about something, particularly the article specifically, unless you've gone over and read it. And that tends to hamper what this is all about. Because what typically happens is people go to ohmTown and they click the links to go to the source, and then they don't come back. Now, I'm fine with that. That in discussing things here on Twitch is what I'm really interested in. The chat on the website is a value add, but not necessarily the only thing. And what I'm really interested in is driving people to a particular topic that might not have been followed if not for a discussion like this in real time, or in the podcast or on the YouTube channel. It's one of those things that I say periodically is you don't know what you don't know. And so when somebody might say something or do something, it brings attention to it, and therefore you end up talking about it. I'm sure you may say, well, duh. But many people kind of take that for granted. You don't know what you don't know. And I certainly don't know a lot of things. I'm not going to pretend to be the smartest man in the room, but I'm trying to consume as much information in some organized fashion so that I'm not overloaded by information and thus miss a ton of things. So that's why I created ohmTown. So at any rate, one of the messages that I am trying to push into people's worldview is not necessarily homesteading, which is the topic of this article, but the fact that you should be growing your own food. It's relatively inexpensive. It's extremely easy to do. Fruits and vegetables and whatnot you can actually grow in your backyard, or like for me, I actually grow lettuce in my basement. And so I have a couple of racks that have lettuce of various types and other things, microgreens, growing so that I can always get fresh microgreens. I actually have to go down in the basement and actually do it soon. I need to replace what has been not growing for the last couple of weeks. I really do need to grow some more. But at any rate, this article says homesteaders grow their own food to offset the soaring costs of grocery shopping. Here are some simple ways you can get started no matter where you live. And this says homesteading and prepping can create security and can save money depending on your approach. Now, I'm not necessarily trying to drive people to homesteading and prepping. To me, depending on where you are, it doesn't make sense. You'll always have some source, but if you are out away from cities or towns or whatever, it takes you 2-3 hours to get to a place, then homesteading is definitely a good thing. Prepping is analog to it. I mean, you can always prep by getting materials and storing it and bottling things, jarring things. But let's click this link. It'll take us over to Business Insider and Gabriela Bianes. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. And so this person here is Ciara Evans with her haul. This is all, what her haul is in this is actually garden mix, like potting material, planter. It's for planters and stuff. And it's similar to what I would use if I'm growing locally, like in my basement. You just take some of that, fill up a pan, throw some seeds on it, start watering it, make sure that there's air flowing over it, and you will have microgreens in a couple of weeks. Sometimes within a week, you'll have like ready to eat microgreens. And they will satiate you. They'll give you some calories. Obviously, if you're highly active, you need more than 1,200, 1,500 calories a day, then yeah, you're going to need something more higher in protein. But you can do something like this in your backyard and definitely grow most of what you need, vegetarian wise. Meat, on the other hand, it's a different animal. But you can definitely grow all of this stuff. Not to mention you can, get livestock. So at any rate, this article over at Business Insider goes through the process and what they do in their homestead and prepping lifestyle. And it's definitely a lifestyle because you'll be spending copious amounts of time doing something on your homestead to make sure that your crop is growing fruitfully, so to speak, or vegetally. I'm not sure how to phrase that. Anyway, go over to Business Insider and you can read more in depth about this. So the next article is business centric but politically motivated. So just kind of warning you, this is in the Mobile channel, and it's about Florida. What DeSantis and his Republican allies are doing will have grave costs. This is a New York Times article, and it says discarding core commitments is not a small concession to changing times, but an abject desecration of everything the GOP long claimed to believe. And so this article is over at the New York Times. It's a guest essay by Stephanie Slade. And what has transpired was there was some backlash by Disney in Florida against the Don't Say Gay bill. And this is a Republican-driven policy where you're not allowed to talk about LGBT plus issues in lower grades. And what happened was DeSantis and the government in Florida basically railed against Disney because Disney spoke out against it. And So it says here in 2010, the Supreme Court held that political speech does not lose First Amendment protection simply because its source is a corporation. The case was Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission, and the conservative justices sided with a group barred by the government from airing a political documentary. And the Republicans used to celebrate that decision for too long, quote, for too long, some in this country have deprived of full participation in the political process, said Mitch McConnell, then the majority leader. The Supreme Court, he added, took an important step in the direction of restoring the First Amendment rights of these groups. Now, I have a problem with this because Citizens United basically gave personhood to corporations beyond the business context. So businesses typically have to have something that makes them act as ongoing concerns, as it's called, and gives them an identity. So you can, a corporation operating in a foreign government, in a foreign country, I should say, literally becomes a member of the society. Just like in the United States, it becomes an entity unto itself, that even if the leadership dies, it doesn't close. It maintains an ongoing concern until it is dissolved. Well, I think that this is wrong. You cannot put a business in jail. You can only shutter it. And the people that are within the business are typically not found directly liable. I had mentioned that I was probably going to take a drink of coffee, but this is the first time in 121 episodes that I've done that. Anyway, so even if the people who spun up the business die, unless the estate actively closes the operation, it maintains its entityhood. Well, I don't think that a business should have political speech. And I say that because when a business speaks, it's speaking, quote unquote, on behalf of everybody within the enterprise. And you have to offset that with some diatribe about how you aren't affiliated with the business when you are a private citizen, not a private citizen within the business, and I have the same message. So let me rephrase that. If I'm working for Disney and Disney says that they are pro don't say gay, then suddenly when I'm out at dinner, I have to say to people, no. I don't agree with Disney's policy of don't say gay. It's on me to extract myself from the political discourse and the negative or positive, it doesn't matter, depending on what side of the fence you're on, that's the matter. So if I have to educate others that I personally believe something different than my business that I work for, not that I own, but I work for, I think the burden is too much on me. And it was created because the business was involved in political discourse, not the individuals. And I've had, yesterday I had this discussion with somebody in my chat. I think that the individuals need to be addressed. But then you end up with what's happening in Twitter, where because Elon Musk made a comment about some administrator position in Twitter, that person's receiving death threats and threats of other physical violence. I'll just put it that way. I said an inflammatory word yesterday that could rile people up, and I normally don't mince my words when I'm talking with people because, it stirs conversation when you are keeping it real, so to speak. So, sorry, I had to take another drink. My voice is gonna my throat's getting scratchy. At any rate, so my problem here is that businesses are not sentient entities all unto themselves dictating what people do. No, it's the people within the organization that are dictating what the business does. And giving a business personhood, the weight of political discourse, means that they are speaking on behalf of the thousands, possibly tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of employees. And that is not the truth. And it literally has unlimited wealth that it can leverage towards this messaging. Just think of the billions or trillions of dollars that Apple and Tesla and Disney and countless other businesses have to leverage in political discourse. And that is not what this country was supposed to be. It's for the people, by the people, by the people, for the people. It is not the businesses. Yet, if you look at the history, there is some argument that all of the controls that are against the federal government were in fact leaning towards commercial enterprise, not hindering business. That is what a lot of the Federalist Papers was talking about, apparently. I don't really buy into it. I think that and I hate using words like real or true or whatever, but to me, this country was founded by individuals that were taking great risk, and most of them left with nothing, including their lives, losing their lives, and ultimately giving rise to what we have today. And you have to be able to acknowledge that the people are what's running this country. And in fact, the world. It isn't some disembodied entity. So you have to treat the people. Give credence to the people, not to the companies. The companies are made up of the people. And I don't necessarily agree with a business in its messaging, particularly its political discourse. So I think businesses should not have political discourse. It isn't the business. The people that are cleaning the bathrooms don't agree with the CEO. And so why is the business the one making any political discourse? The people that are working on computer chips, they don't necessarily agree with the entirety of the business. And just because you're employed there is not de facto permission to speak on their behalf. And there is my position on this. So DeSantis goes and says, hey, I'm going to rezone a region that has basically no taxes, and now it's going to cost millions of dollars to taxpayers because the burden is going to be pushed over to the citizens in the area. Once this rezoning is going to go down, it's going to end up costing the people, because it was basically a burden on Disney to perform certain activities in the region. And from there, they retained great tax benefits. So now prices are going to go up. The people that are in the area are going to have to start paying taxes. And based on what I've learned recently, there are bonds that are outstanding. And so the policy can't change until all of those bonds are pulled back. They're paid, basically. They're compensated. And I don't see that happening anytime soon, if at all. I mean, I think that, I think that what's going on there is because a company decided to speak out against a political entity, a person, DeSantis, and those that are in effect trying to marginalize a great number of people, and quote unquote prevent indoctrination. Various people have said this. No, you're trying to indoctrinate children into LGBT lifestyle. No. It's a means of describing a person that falls within that framework of LGBT existence. They've always existed in history. You go back time immemorial, and there are LGBT people, LGBT plus people. There are people. And the problem is that they've been oppressed, marginalized, deleted entirely. It's unbelievable the tunnel vision that people have in trying to say that people don't exist, shouldn't exist, etc., etc., whatever it is. I guarantee you, somewhere in the family line of every person that has spoken against the LGBT community has somebody that is LGBTQ and plus, and it's been suppressed consciously, causing irreparable psychological trauma to their existence. And it isn't a choice of a lifestyle. The choice is that they are being forced to live a lie, simply because if they don't make that decision, they're living their true self in private, but they are being forced to suppress their natural predilection, their natural life, because of people like DeSantis. Straight up, that is exactly what's happening. Make no bones about it. There are people that are even within the Republican Party, because they're everywhere. But they're human beings, just like everybody else that is a human being. They're a human being, and they should be respected and given every benefit of being a human being, and not hidden away and told for the beginnings of children's lives that these people don't exist, because they do. And they are the same people that have children. So why not speak naturally about everybody? None of this makes any sense. And it's even if you think of it on the pure business, government taxing people, antiseptic, clinical perspective of business and pulling it away from humanity, these people are going to be charging other people with additional taxes and other financial burdens simply because they are not willing to accept other human beings in the gamut, in the spectrum of human existence. It's antisocial, it's sociopathic, and I disagree with it. And there you are. You can go over to the New York Times. I spent 20 minutes on this topic because I think it's that important. More to the point and more succinctly, I think everybody should be treated as human, regardless of anything involving their lifestyle, their existence. And a person should be treated based on their behavior, their actions, their treatment of other people. It has nothing to do with who you love. It has nothing to do with how you dress. It has nothing to do with what you identify as. You are a human being above all things, and you deserve respect as a human being. Okay, I'm going to continue on. The next article is over in Hatch Ideas. It is 3 warning signs that the U.S. economy could be headed for a downturn this year. And so I'm moving from one long-winded, deep subject to another long-winded, deep subject. And it's not necessarily positive, but you can actually make money on a downturn in an economy. You short sell the products the stocks that you see are going to collapse faster than the rest, and you can make some arbitrage money. The U.S. is charging toward a full economic recovery, but there are still some flashing warning signs: supply chain issues, the labor shortage, the inflation, all present major risks to the rebound. And here's how each of the risks could derail the recovery and even spark a new downturn. I don't know. This is an article over at Business Insider, and they're kind of painting the silver lining that is on the horizon kind of a thing, but I beg to differ. This is an article over at businessinsider.com and written by Ben Wink, W-I-N-C-K. And again, they do this thing where it's kind of like a snippet of text and then a picture or an ad, and then there's more discussion. It says logistics. Oh, so they talk about all of these issues. But my main concern is that there is profiteering taking place, and the consumer price index is increasing still. The cost for fuel is causing the inflationary trend across the board. Yet these mega corporations are still having record profits. And again, I reach back into that bucket of it's antisocial, sociopathic behavior. You are hindering everybody else for short-term profit, and it can lean us into a great recession again. So here it says the labor market's recovery has been 3 times faster than that seen after the Great Recession, but it's coming up against some snags. No. The reason why it's perceived as being a great recovery is because there are fewer people that are even looking for jobs because they've been abused by previous employers and they're not even making enough money to exist. So they're looking for better paying jobs. Well, where are these better paying jobs? Because $15 an hour doesn't even get you into living in an apartment in your space. And if you're working in a job that is paying you only $15 an hour, it might be in food service and you're relying on tips in the United States. And if you're relying on tips in the United States and there's nobody going out for those to those locations, you're not making tip money. So you're basically making whatever it is the employer decided to give you. And it can be below $15 an hour. So it says prices are still soaring, and they talk about it. Prices for everyday goods and services climbed 8.5% in the year through March. So that's just the first quarter. You're going to end up, it says, marking the fastest pace since 1981, which was the era of 13% interest or inflation. So this is not going to continue to decline, in my estimation. Not as long as mega corporations that are having record profits demand their profit margin remain high. You can't have 30% margin without punishing everybody else, particularly in the market of gas, oil. And that's why I say everybody needs to start growing microgreens at home, some more other stuff at home. What all depends on what your footprint is. So I can grow copious amounts of microgreens in my basement, and I have no problem doing that. Other people cannot. It has to be a much smaller amount, or it has to be something different. You have to find out what it is that you can be strategic about and lean on that. So that you benefit from it and you don't have to go somewhere and spend god awful amounts of money, because lettuce at a store is really expensive and it's already dying on the vine before you even get it. Once you get it at home, you better consume it fast because it's degrading immediately. It degraded before it ever even left the shipping company. But microgreens at home are growing fresh and they will fill you up. So this article talks about 3 warning signs, and it says global supply chain is still badly tangled. Yep, and it's being constrained, I think, consciously, because it drives up prices. And when a market is being manipulated, then you don't actually have to care about anything else. You just want to drive up the prices and constrain it and hobble. Businesses are so desperate to hire that they could raise wages so much they exacerbate inflation. That's not even remotely true. The reason why you have inflation is because there is a lot of money chasing too few goods. Well, right now, all of that money is concentrated in the ultra wealthy, not in the middle class where it should be. There should be a massive amount of money in the middle class that's all kind of revolving around them being compensated and them purchasing goods and services, and it stays within that spectrum somewhere in the middle class, and the upper class has great wealth in comparison because they are doing investing and whatnot, and they have a lot of stuff. But the middle class is the generator of the economy. Right now, the economy is going to suffer because all of that wealth is concentrated in what is amounting to be American oligarchs. Very few people with great wealth and political influence, and they're willing to screw everybody else over for personal benefit. And the next thing is prices are still soaring, and that's the way that it's going to be, because corporations are trying to extract ever increasing benefit to the company and their stakeholders, which is the policy. But I think that even the person that said the objective of a business is to make money, they regretted it at the end of their life, and they ended up saying that's the worst phrase that they ever uttered. And right now I can't remember their name, but anyway, I'm sure somebody else that's listening to the podcast or the stream will be able to tell me. But right now I just forgot it because, well, I'm distracted. The next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel. This apartment-sized floating home has 2 bedrooms and its own rooftop garden. Take a look. It's a houseboat, has tinted windows and an outdoor terrace where occupants can overlook the marina. The floating home is around the same size as an average apartment in London. To buy the home, you have to pay around $223,000. The Float One home is split over 2 levels at nearly 800 square feet. It's larger than many apartments in London. So let's go take a look at it. It's over at Business Insider. And I love the idea of having a floating home. And at $223,000, it's a steal in the fact that you can just take your boat and go somewhere else. I'd love to live on a boat. My only problem is the water. You have to get your boat serviced on the regular, much more than a house. Otherwise, anything can happen. I mean, you spring a leak and your boat is submersible. So, and accidents happen. So keep that in mind if you're going to. And there's always been this adage, there's 2 times in a boat owner's life where they are truly happy: when they buy the boat and when they sell the boat. But rest assured, I would love to live on a boat. As long as I have an easy means of plumbing and high-speed internet, I'm good to go. I'm not a big fan of composting toilets and stuff like that. So, while the entire upper level is taken up by an outside terrace, which is spacious enough for garden furniture, barbecue, water toys, and deck chairs. Yeah, I'd be all over this, I think. I would love this. I'm gonna have to go talk to my wife about this, see maybe if we can do this. As one of the smaller homes in Float 8's fleet, the houseboat costs upwards of £175,000 or $223,000. I wonder what the mortgage would be on a quote-unquote house boat. Probably can't actually do that. Not really a mortgage, but a long-term loan. And the insurance is probably going to be through the roof. The houseboat can only be used on inland waterways and marinas. Float 8 has a show home docked in London's Canary Wharf. But the company is also looking to expand to other parts of the UK. So it's over in the UK. Pretty neat. I love the idea. The practicality of it for me, though, I have a workshop that is close to 1,100 square feet. So I don't think that the boat has an additional 1,100 square feet floating around somewhere next to it. The next article is over in Warcrafters channel, and it's this D&D campaign has been running for 40 years. It's kind of like the longest tag game. The latest episode of Wired's Obsessed series profiles Robert Wardhaw, the dungeon master of a D&D campaign that's been running continuously since 1982. Most campaigns are lucky to last more than a few months. Making it to the 40-year mark is quite an achievement. The focus of the video is on Mordau's setup, which takes up the entire basement of a house he bought with this sizable gaming area in mind. Wow. It's got room for his collection of 30,000 or so miniatures, all of which he laboriously hand-painted, which is why players aren't allowed to touch them during play. My God. He's also got terrain to represent every conceivable part of the homebrew setting based on the alternate fantasy version of historical Earth, and Wardau is a history professor at Western University in London, Ontario. So talk about dedication. Yeah, I would probably be using this to talk with people about history as well. Ran his first, so Wardau ran his first game of Dungeons and Dragons as a teenager in 1982 and hasn't stopped. Yeah, I think I started before him, so. But this is pretty neat. No, I probably started at the same time. Let's see. Go over, yeah, I'm just going to say, go over to PC Gamer and, or YouTube. PC Gamer is the source for me, so I encourage you to go over to PC Gamer, and the article's written by Jody McGregor, and it's titled, "This D&D campaign has been running for 40 years." So go over there and watch the video on their site, since they are the reason why I'm even talking about this. But it's a YouTube video as well. So it's pretty neat. That's some serious dedication, folks. 40 years of a campaign. If they meet only once a quarter, though, I didn't go into detail about how often they meet. Okay, so the next article is over in Hatch Ideas. It's sourced from CNBC, and the title is "Electric Boats Built by GM and Former SpaceX Engineers Could Be the Next Big Thing." Take a look. Sorry, I had to take another drink, and I'm leaving all of this in the podcast, so I hope you enjoy it. Let's go visit the source. There isn't much context there in the snippet, but I would love an electric boat. You know what? I'm just going to have to log into this thing and leave it logged in. Okay. Anyway, I don't see an author for this, so it's basically a section called "Make It" by CNBC, and it's all about electric boats. Los Angeles-based Arc Boats has attracted more than $30 million in funding from venture capital investors, as well as celebrities like Will Smith and Kevin Durant. You know, now I'm stuck between, I keep hearing Will Smith, right? So yes, I know about the slapper, but there's another Will Smith who is the writer for the Disney show. I think it's on Disney Plus, right? Yeah. Slow Horses. Fantastic. If you've ever read Le Carré, then you will immediately find an affinity for Slow Horses. I absolutely love the writing. The first season has been spectacular to me, and now they've already confirmed another season. So definitely go and check that out. But anyway, Will Smith is the writer, but it's not the slapper Will Smith. It's the writer Will Smith. So anyway, that's why I even brought it up. So in this case, it says that didn't stop auto giant General Motors from putting the spotlight on electric boats. So as long as the boat doesn't sink and the battery pack is waterproof and hasn't been damaged, electric boats are superior for the ecology of watercraft, for wherever the watercraft is, I should say, because watercraft doesn't have an ecology. But for waterways where an electric boat can be piloted, it is superior to gas because it's not exuding fumes, and it's not leaking oil, and it's not dripping gasoline, and it's not contaminating the water. Even when it sinks, it's not going to contaminate the water. You can just go and pick up the battery pack. But fuel will leak out of a sinking boat. There's still, even after Pearl Harbor, there's still boats that are leaking oil, or fuel oil, I should say. Anyway, pure watercraft, electric pontoon boat, the Ark 1, which looks like a speedboat. It can fit up to 12 people, but it has a starting price of $300,000. Wow. The Candela C8 is a hydrofoil, but it's electric. If you've never seen a hydrofoil boat or anything that is a hydrofoil, it basically has a couple of posts that are sticking down from the boat, and typically it's connected by a wing at the bottom. Sometimes they're really split, but it has to be a large enough craft to support the strengthening process. But anyway, as soon as it hits a certain speed, it actually lifts up out of the water and lowers the amount of drag to nothing more than the wing and the posts that are holding the wing. So you can go a whole lot faster for a longer amount of time. And they even mentioned it here in the caption for the picture. The Candela C8 flying electric craft uses hydrofoils. It's not really flying, it's skimming. It uses hydrofoils to reduce drag on the water, requiring less energy to hit top speeds. It's pretty neat. But it isn't cheap. $300,000, folks, for a boat. Okay, so let's go on to the next article. This is about Ming-Chi Kuo saying that Apple Watch Series 8 could gain body temperature sensing if its algorithm works. This person is kind of really in the loop, so to speak, Ming-Chi Kuo. But they believe software issues prevented it from arriving earlier in the Series 7 and is the main factor for inclusion in the next model. I will probably end up with the Watch 8 because I think I've got a 6 right now. I can't really recall. Maybe older. And there's a lot of new stuff coming to the Series 8, and not to mention better battery life, but perhaps even satellite functionality, which would be amazing, but I'm not sure about that. And even the next iPhone might have satellite functionality, not just cellular. We'll see. I'm whispering that nice and quietly. So let's click this link. It'll take us over to Apple Insider. Malcolm Owen is the author. And let's see here. It says the Apple Watch has been subject to many different rumors about its fitness tracking sensors and capabilities, with body temperature sensing being one of the most prominent potential additions. In doubling down on its inclusion in the Apple Watch Series 8, TF Securities analyst Ming-Chi Kuo offers that it could have been in the Apple Watch Series 7 if Apple managed to get its algorithm working. Yeah, I'm not sure. What else is in here? Though seemingly a simple task for a device to achieve, Kuo spells out it's actually a difficult problem for Apple to solve. The challenge in implementing precise body temperature measurement is that skin temperature quickly varies depending on outside elements. Yeah, and so unless it's more intrusive or in a different location than your wrist, your body temperature can be impacted by external forces. For instance, if you have a temperature and they're using somebody is using a touchless sensor to test your temperature on your forehead, it can be completely thrown out of whack just by air conditioning in a car. A smartwatch can't support core temperature measurement in terms of hardware, so it needs an excellent algorithm to work together. That's pretty much the same for everything. So go over to Apple Insider and check it out if you want to know more about it. The next article is over in Hatch Ideas as well. Is 700 considered a good credit score? Here's how it compares to the average American's credit score. And just so you know, not everybody utilizes the Americanized version of credit scores. Many places may use a provider of a credit score, but then they use their own internal mechanisms to assess. But in the United States, it's almost wholly by directive, by government directive, if I recall correctly. Now I'll have to go and look into it to refresh my memory, but you can make an arbitrary decision, but it's not founded in reality. If you're going to provide somebody a loan, you can go, no, I don't think so. I don't like the cut of your jib, so to speak. But if you don't pull their credit history or something like that, then somebody has foundation to basically sue you for disparate treatment based on all kinds of things: age, appearance, race, gender, all kinds of things of protected classes. So it's better to just pull the credit score and go, because of this, I don't want to give you any money. So let's see. This article is over at CNBC, and Trina Paul is the author. And again, the title is 700 considered a good credit score? So they talk about the credit score, and when you have an excellent credit rating, it's between 800 and 850. So 700 is actually dropping down into good, but is that truly good? Well, let's see here. So how does it stack up against everybody else on average? Achieving a credit score of 700 officially places you in the good credit score category, although it does fall slightly below the average. In April 2021, the average FICO score was listed at 716, following a generally upward trend in average credit scores over the past 10 years, according to Experian. 40% of consumers have FICO scores lower than 700. So technically, you are above average. Pardon me, I had to take a drink. So pretty neat. Unfortunately, I don't think that credit scores really represent your credit worthiness. Your actions do. There's risk in giving credit to somebody in a vacuum, though, so it's always smart as a business to pull somebody's credit score if you're going to be offering a contract of some kind wherein credit is part of this process. And you have to get permission, and it says there are multiple types of FICO scores, and while mortgage lenders don't usually work with the same one that's used to make most lending decisions, they'll consider a version of it that doesn't weigh as heavily on credit utilization. Most lenders, however, will still look at a person's credit score to evaluate their credit worthiness. According to Federal Reserve data, 67% of mortgages that originated in quarter 4 of 2021 were to borrowers with a credit score above 760, while only 2% provided to subprime borrowers. Well, that is entirely because of 2008's real estate collapse, because they were predatory. There was predatory lending primarily from, let me not say primarily. A great number of this predatory lending was from Wells Fargo's real estate market or mortgage division. They were giving some subprime they were giving credit to subprime borrowers, I should say. And it resulted essentially in the collapse because people couldn't pay it back. But there was a ton of money being pushed out into the market. So banks collapsed, and a great amount of money was doled out to the banks to recover. My information was Citi was the only one that took money that really didn't need it. But they had to take the money because everybody else was taking money, and it would have come across as if Citi's the only one that has stability. Now, times change, so I can't ever even say what really happened That it's just my perception of it, and through discussions with various people. And it's been paid back in spades in some places. So credit cards are another matter. Mortgages, leveraged loans where you use something else that as an asset to bolster the loan to mitigate some of the risk. Those can end up being quite low in interest rate, but you have to have some historical positives in your credit. But credit cards, now your interest rate is going to be extremely high. Mortgages, if you didn't refi your mortgage or get a mortgage towards the end of last year, you're pretty much on the outs. It's going to be quite expensive, both in terms of what is required and how much per month. It's going to be at least a decade before you can refi to lower it, I'd say. Because mortgage rates, I think, are going to continue to go up. But let's continue on. I've got a few more articles. The next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel. It relates to business. Successful people do these 3 things on Sunday for a happier, stress-free work week, according to a productivity expert. And the little snippet says there's no magic cure for the Sunday scaries. Never even heard that phrase, but these 3 strategies recommended by productivity expert Chris Bailey can help. Click the link, takes us over to CNBC, and Morgan Smith is the author, and it says set intentions for the week, create a task list and accomplishments list, and find a self-care ritual. Okay, so that's kind of like my doctor telling me, well, I'm sick, so get healthy. Thanks, doc. But you can go over and check out this article over at CNBC about the successful people who do these 3 things on Sunday. See, for me, my intentions for next week were set on Friday before end of business. That way I don't ever have to think about work until Monday morning, because I've already planned for the next week. Create a task list and an accomplishments list. I don't need an accomplishments list. I do need a task list. And that's normally buried in my calendar. And find a self-care ritual. My self-care ritual is maintaining a positive work-life balance where I'm the benefactor of my work. And work is paying me to work during work hours. So I take a lunch. I no longer have to commute. My work-life balance is exactly where it should be. Although at my age, I would prefer to be retired, but that's not going to happen, folks. I'm going to stream. Who knows? It might even be televised, my demise, right here on Twitch at age 78 or 85 or 90 or whatever. I'm probably going to have to delete this section of my stream. Anyway. So I'm going to die of old age. that's my angle at that last statement. So just in case somebody's worried about me, don't worry about me. Not the last, I've got 3 more. This article is in Hatch Ideas. That actually embarrassed me. So the next article is over in Hatch Ideas. This luxury $31 million London mansion is one of London's most exclusive neighborhoods, recently went on the market. Take a look. So it's $31.3 million. Sorry, I had to take another drink. A $31.3 million mansion is one of London's most expensive, on one of London's most expensive streets, recently went on the market. Let's take a look. I'll do this quick. I'm over an hour on this stream so far. So a luxury mansion in one of London's most expensive neighborhoods. Where are the pictures? Okay. So the mansion is located Regent's Park area of London. Yeah, well, if you're somewhere around Regent's Park, yeah. The majority of sales in the area last year were apartments which were sold on average for 1.7 or 2.1 million US dollars, 1.7 million pounds, according to the portal Rightmove. A row house sold for an average of 4 million pounds, or about 5 million US dollars. Yeah, I don't know. Properties on the terrace often sell for tens of millions of pounds. That is outrageous. Well, but look at the inside. It's a little too ostentatious for my tastes, but man. Oh, it says a rendering of what a bathroom at the Cornwall Terrace property could look like. I don't want a rendering. It's all CGI. For crying out loud, this is not what it looks like. Okay, I'm just going to move on. The next article is Elon Twitter is not the town square. It's just a private shop. The square belongs to us all. This is an article over at The Guardian. I'm just going to go straight to it. And we can talk here on the other side. This is an article. It says opinion Elon Musk, but it's written by John Naughton. Elon, they're addressing Elon. Elon, Twitter is not the town square. It's just a private shop. The square belongs to us all. And that really is the nuts and bolts of this. Purchasing Twitter to argue that it's a free speech town square belies the fact that it's wholly owned by a single person. Arguably. I think that there's many more investors on the back end that are only part of the upper echelon clique, and they're going to be profiteering off of the privatization of the town square. And now it is a private town square where a very select few are dictating what can be said there, including complete out and out fabrications, not even anything having to do with jokes and satire and punking somebody and whatever else. No, it's wholly owned by somebody who wants to open it up to vitriolic speech, hate speech, out and out lies, what amounts to what amounts to basically inflammatory speech that has no bearing on reality. And that is the problem. In a real town square, other people would just walk away and the person would be yelling into the wind. But you can't do that on Twitter. You'd have to leave the platform to get away from it. And then even in the news, you would hear about it. The town square, its implication as a town square is that we all own it. Not that there's only a select few that own it. Anybody can go to the town square, just like you can go and talk in various locations in any town if you so desire. But the town square was designed so that everybody could come and have a chat. Well, now you can't. And you won't be shouted out of Twitter. Why? Because as long as you aren't, you can say whatever you want on Twitter as long as it isn't an out and out fabrication, a lie, a vitriolic, hate speech, denigrating other people, etc. You can't do that in the real world because society would lash out against you. But it's typically the bananas people that are doing this vitriolic hate speech. Literally, they were cast out of society because they were antisocial. They were sociopathic behavior. They were exemplifying sociopathic behavior. They were saying lies. They were calling people names. They were abusing people psychologically or physically. That's why these very same people out in the real world are utilizing these social networks so that they can get a cohort of people that are of like mind, but in the real world would have been told by society to go to hell. Well, now they've got a vehicle for their brand of society, which is antisocial. So I want you to go over and read all of this article because it goes into other detail. What kind of power is it really? Many years ago in a landmark book, Power, A Radical View, the sociologist Stephen Lukes wrote that power comes in three varieties: the ability to stop people doing what they want to do, the ability to compel them to do what they don't want to do, and the ability to shape the way they think. This third capability is clearly the kind of power that a society's communications media wield. That's why I'm against one person owning too much media. But until Trump arrived on the scene, Twitter didn't look like a particularly powerful player. It's a midget compared to giants such as Facebook and YouTube. 217 million daily users compared with Facebook's 1.96 billion, for example. And as any local politician knows from doorstep canvassing, very few ordinary citizens use it. Correct. But the people that do use it are active and they're mobile. Let's just say that. You know, there are people that are threatening somebody that works within Twitter because they practice the policy of the business. And it's very subjective. Some people will sit there and rail against the enterprise, but suddenly some people reach out to the individual within it. And so in this particular case, Elon railed against somebody within Twitter, and now people are making death threats and threatening other bodily harm of this woman who was clearly just doing what her job is. But she was drawn out into the public instead of not hiding, but being protected by the enterprise's blanket. I am part of Twitter as an employee. They're not the one that's setting the policy, and they can't diverge from the policy without risking their job. So they either choose their personal safety or they quit. What kind of a society is this? But it's subjective, right? The same people are spewing vitriol, and because there is a lot of followers, suddenly it's okay. But it's not, and it wouldn't be in the real world. All of these vindictive, angry people that are out there would have been suppressed by society itself out in the real world. But because it's online, they can say and do whatever they want. And then it transfers out into the real world because these people will skulk around in the dark and abuse somebody in the real world, thinking that they're immune to prosecution, but they won't be should they harm somebody. So let me continue on with the next article. The next article is in Tabletop Nights. Hello to those who have come in to my chat. Appreciate you being here. Feel free to ask questions, make comments. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I'm almost at the end of my show, but I'm happy to stay a little bit afterward and we can chat as long as you want, actually. This next article is in Tabletop Nights, RPGs of 2022, every RPG and the release dates. If you are new here, and I can't actually see right now who all is in my chat. Living the dream here, folks. So, yeah, my chat actually says that I've got like 20 people in here, but I know that I only have, I have fewer. I don't know what the real number is. Oh, hey, Dreadnought. Welcome to the show. You made it right towards the end, actually. So I'm into RPGs. I haven't been able to play an RPG as a player or even a DM for years and years, but I follow live play podcasts like the Glass Cannon, and I watch them and others here on Twitch and elsewhere. But I buy RPG books for some reason, like Warhammer and Pathfinder and D&D. I don't know why. I even have applications that allow me to do world building, map building, and stuff like that. And it's part of my Aerith idea here in the creator space. Aerith is a storybook world where if you are interested in writing within the Aerith framework, I actually give you a world that is connected to Aerith. But anyway, that's a long-winded saying, way of saying that I'm into RPGs, but I don't get to play. Not unless it's a computer game, really. Oh, did Timeless end his stream? Oh yeah, look, it just it went over to the Red Goblin, who I've not seen before, but cool. Okay, so this is over in rpgsite.net, and it's all of the RPGs that are coming in 2022. And they're counting Pokemon Legends Arceus as one of them, apparently. But here are, it's basically just a long list by month in 2022. And so many of these have actually already gone through. There might have been an update, so that's why my aggregator pulled it in. But there are a lot of them. And they're all being referred to as RPGs. I don't know if all of them, I guess they all are. They've done their homework. But there's April and there's May. And I'll be waiting for all of these and looking at them. But I don't really talk too much about gaming so much on the stream, although I probably should. I really am a gamer. I mean, I play games all the time. I just don't stream very often because it's in fits and starts. And so this 1 hour show on the weekends, I would like to start streaming more. And this summer I will I'm going to be streaming 6 to 8 hours a day starting in a couple of weeks. And we'll see what happens from there. So I'll probably be playing games and then break it up with the news show each day, or start with the news show and then switch over to gaming. Because you just can't live in a news vacuum. You're being impacted by all of this stuff all the time. At any rate, go over to rpgsite.net. The author of this article is Adam Vitale. It might be Vital. I don't know how he pronounces his name. I should probably ask him. The last article is over in Mobile, and the title is Sunflower Oil Vanishes as Ukraine War Grinds On. This is where we're going to end. I'm kind of bowing out of including a lot of discussion about the conflict, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But it says several British supermarkets have joined other chains around the world in asking shoppers to limit their cooking oil purchases as supplies dwindle and prices rise. And this is like the standard supply and demand issue, except that the supply issue is bound entirely by that conflict. And so, again, to me, you know what your price was when you priced it. And now, because it's being constrained, prices are being jacked up. But that really, to me, it seems so predatory to do that, because supply and demand, to me, have a different connotation. If you set your price for something, that is what your subsistence, your marginal price is. You exist on the margin of that for profit, because that margin is everything above what it costs for you to produce. Now, I understand that because it is constrained due to the conflict, your prices are no longer providing enough subsistence. To me, because of that conflict, the burden really shouldn't be on all of the people that are purchasing that product. It should be about pricing your product so that your business and your draw would sustain itself long enough for you to either find another source so that you can keep on producing your product, or the conflict would end and you'd be able to start getting your product again. But because everything else is increasing in price and supply is being constrained, suddenly you're jacking the prices up because you're not getting enough from the product that your business chose to bear that risk on. And instead of going, well, I should have saved some more from my business, you end up, sorry, and I'm going to take a drink again. This is the first time in 121 episodes where I've been drinking while I'm streaming. because I don't like doing that. I like to just stream and have a chat. But um, today it's Sunday, and I'm sitting here wearing a shirt that's about a cereal called Spider Bites that has Spider-Man on it. I mean, come on, Mayor Watt. Anyway, so Dreadnought says stupid to have one source and no backup. Correct. And that's what I say to my clients. That's what I say to people when I'm talking publicly. Um, if you have all of your eggs in one basket, you're going to end up losing your basket and you're screwed. You're done. Same thing happens with people because there's a lot of rumors right now about Twitch and what's going to happen. If you aren't streaming already or preparing or storing stuff somewhere else, the moment that the rug gets pulled out from under you over on Twitch, for whatever reason, you could literally say something wrong and you're nixed from the platform and you have no source of income. And this has happened with other people. But normally the risk takers are the ones that are way deep into the profitability side of streaming. And they've got thousands or millions of followers, not only on Twitch, but over on YouTube and TikTok and Insta, and they're pretty much everywhere. But in this case, it's a business that was providing sunflower oil, which if you, again, like you said, if you only have one source and no backup and no reserve that lasts long term, which it's hard to do with something that degrades like sunflower oil. You are risking it all. Let's click the link. I'll take you over to the source, which is New York Times. And it says several British supermarkets have joined other chains around the world in asking shoppers to limit their cooking oil purchases as supplies dwindle and prices rise. This happened with paper products here in the States. The author of this article, by the way, over at New York Times is Christine Hauser. And for the first time in my life, and I don't know, comparatively, I'm old compared to most people, I'd say, on Twitch. First time in my life, I've actually had to stand in line to get paper products from a store. Never thought that would happen. And it all spawns from the coronavirus and the fact that we started vaccinating early. In the grand scheme of things, we started vaccinating early because there was such a massive infusion of capital and drive to find a vaccine. Billions of dollars were made, and not lost. Let's just say that honestly, the money wasn't lost. It's in the system. That's part of the reason why there's so much inflation, because there's just a ton of money in the system and it hasn't been pulled out yet. And that's what the Federal Reserve is all about. But at any rate, all of these problems, and then during a pandemic, Russia invades Ukraine, and that kind of shat on the whole supply chain from Ukraine, which is a major exporter of sunflower oil, sunflower products in general. So it's a shame, and it's causing bigger issues. That conflict is causing greater issues across the board. And again, I've said this before in previous streams, it shouldn't be this way, because every country should be able to be self-sufficient. Even if it is at a higher cost, they should be self-sufficient in the base products, food, right, shelter. The food element of it, every country should be self-sufficient, because it might be cheaper to get it from somewhere else, but they always have the ability to fall back on themselves should something happen. Now, a conflict like Russia invading Ukraine is just being wiped off the map. I mean, everything that is vertical in Ukraine is basically being blown up by bombs in Russia. So it's going to be really tough for them to sustain themselves internally. So there's a lot of countries that are funneling resources to Ukraine, but it's obviously not going to be enough if it persists too long. But that said, every other country out there that isn't being invaded right now should be self-sufficient, which is why I'm one of the people that promotes the idea of growing things at home. Um, Again, not everybody can do that. I understand that. But you can grow microgreens at home. You can store other shelf-stable products. Um, I'm not saying, hey, it's the end of the world, you need to be a prepper. But you do have to be able to survive should something like this happen in your particular region. Even if it is for 3 months or 6 months or even up to a year, hopefully the conflict will end and everything will return to the old normal. But we will see. For me, what I'm telling people is that interest rates will continue. We're going to see, I think, 1980s level U.S. inflation levels, recession, and higher prices for the next decade. I don't think that it's going to return to low prices for a while. The only thing that I really say about this is that we were warned about food prices increasing back in 2021. Actually, now that I think about it, it might have been earlier. I'll have to go and pull up the quote, but I had mentioned it. No, it was early last year. There was a person from the food industry that just straight out of the gate just said that the era of cheap food is gone. And I thought that it was weird that somebody would just say that in a vacuum. And now it's pretty obvious. Something has transpired, and I say that it's all fuel based, that the era of cheap food had lower margins, and now you're going to end up with companies that are in food and in oil and other consumables that are showing record profits. And it's because starting at the fuel, the prices are increasing dramatically faster than they would have normally. And it isn't just conflict, but the conflict gives credibility to their statement that we're raising prices because of the conflict. And that's just not true. It's profiteering through and through. There's a lot of money in the system, and they are going to get it. The producers of these goods are going to get it. And they're not going to give it to the working class. They're going to pile all that money up into the upper echelon, and you're going to end up with American oligarchs. Do I sound conspiratorial? No, not really. It's not a conspiracy. It's a business process. And it's sociopathic because they want billions, and they see that the potential is there for billions. And my stream just died. Again, my stream dies periodically. I don't know what it is, but it dropped to 900 kilobits per second and then jumped up to 12,000, and now it's back at 6,000. I just don't understand what it is that's doing this. But at any rate, my point is that it's profiteering, and that profiteering is going to penalize everybody, and it's going to be disproportionate based on your socioeconomic status. The rich aren't going to feel these price increases in any real way because their interest on their investments are going to be eclipsing the burden of the additional costs. They're not going to feel the pinch, but the middle class and lower class, definitely. We're all going to feel it, and it's going to be in various death by 1,000 cuts kind of a thing. And that is really sociopathic. But when I bring that kind of stuff up, people say, oh, you're talking about socialist. And no, I'm a capitalist. I believe in charging for what you think your product is worth. But as a consumer, I don't have to be happy with it. And when I price something that might be deemed outrageous, if I want to sell something for $250,000, but somebody else says, well, I want it, but I only want to pay $5,000 for it. Well, I hate to break it to you. I'm the owner of that product. So if I want to sell it to you for $250,000 and nothing less, guess what you're going to have to pay? $250,000. And I've actually had that happen to me. I've had people walk up to me and say, hey, I want to buy this. And I set the price, and they're like, well, let's discuss this. Let me pay a little bit lower. And no, that's my cost to you is X amount. Is it irrational? Maybe, but I own it. and I want the item until somebody can give me enough money to offset it. You know, if I lose it because you're paying $250,000, fine. Why am I harping on this $250,000 or whatever it is? It's just illustrative of the price of this oil here in various shops. There is a time and a place. If I'm selling something and I've got 50 of them made, I've set the price. If it's $50 for all of these items, you know, $50 per item, and I'm down to the last item, I don't jack the price up. Why? Because I can make more, or I've planned for the exclusivity of the initial 10 products, and I've charged accordingly. But for whatever reason, in consumables like this, oh, look, the solution is constrained. Let's slowly ramp up the price so I can extract more wealth from the people that are not able to provide more money. So to me, it seems like it's a weird business mechanism, but I understand, don't get me wrong. I have a very firm understanding of supply and demand. You know, Apple, for instance, charges, let's say, $2,000 for a laptop, and it's $2,000 all day long. Not only are they pricing off of the perceived value of it, but it is constrained and rather elitist because only a few people in the relative grand scheme of things can afford that $2,000 laptop. Ta-da, I get it. If they only have 10 left in stock, the Apple Store doesn't start ramping up its prices. That's not how it works. I can buy a bunch of them and then I'll start ramping up the prices. It's predatory. Is it ethical? Well, it depends on what side of the fence you're on. I don't think that it's ethical. So to me, these people should have priced it what they thought that it was priced at, it was valued at, and left it alone because they were making their profit based on that. Now they just want to pay more rent because it's constrained. And again, it's predatory. So tell me what you think. Let me know either in comments on YouTube, or you can even do reviews over on Apple or on Google. Spotify is where the podcast is as well. You can go to ohmTown.com, leave a comment, like, hate, do whatever you want. Let me know what you think of both the articles, the show, my commentary. Is very, I don't know, my commentary is based on my understanding of business, technology, and society, and I keep all of that in mind when I frame my opinions about things. And I just think that we aren't using technology to the benefit of society at the greatest level that is achievable. Ukraine shouldn't be invaded and thus impacting its entire existence because it can no longer export goods. That is really what's going to do Ukraine in if this war grinds on. All of the people that are being hobbled by Russian policy of turning off the gas should have been leaning on technology to benefit society. But businesses are doing short-term profits over long-term viability, and in doing so have constrained development of the society within that region and the world around us. So the real problem here is we aren't acting as a unified entity. We are getting personal benefit from everything that we're doing at the business level. And if you want to know more about my perspective of this stuff, then go back to the beginning of this stream and podcast, because I mentioned it there as well, that we are acting short-term selfish, and it's going to cost us long-term viability. Simply because, well, oh, look, I'm charging more, I get more money, But now nobody's going to want your product because they know that all you're going to do is gouge. And I can almost guarantee you that prices for certain products that have gone up over the term of this first quarter will not return lower or back to normal. There are going to be predatory pricing in an ongoing way because now they see how much people are willing to purchase their product at. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see a 10 or 15% markup from now on for that particular product. Because they've tested in business school, it's just phrased as the elasticity of demand. And they've seen another term called the bulk rate, where people will bear the burden of waiting or doing whatever they need to do until they just won't do it anymore and quote unquote bulk and go find an alternative source. Not everybody needs, right? Sunflower oil. They can get something else. So at any rate, my soapbox can tend towards getting higher and higher as we go deeper into a particular subject. But I understand other people's perspectives when it's given. So feel free to let me know what you think of these things. And I'm happy to talk about them further. But that said, at the beginning and end of each of the shows, I always introduce you to the front page of ohmTown, and here we have it. And then I click the link, and it refreshes and gives you some more news. Depending on if I break it or not, which I haven't yet, but now that I've said that, it might break. So, and there we have a whole bunch more news in various categories of ohmTown. There's a bug in the pagination of the site. But go over to ohmTown. You can still go page by page. We're somewhere over towards the 11,000 pages mark now of news that has been aggregated for me over the various years that I've been using it. But again, it's open to the public, so go use it. And with that in mind, I'm Mayor Watt. I'm the mayor of ohmTown. That's that. And I'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Thanks for coming by. Bye-bye.